Hello and welcome back to another episode of Vikings Happy Hour. We're fresh off the NFL Combine, a week away from NFL free agency, and so who better to bring on than Jordan Reid, ESPN, uh, Vikings fan, draft expert. I mean, we have it all right here on Vikings Happy Hour today. So, JR, thank you for joining. Uh, I just want to dive right into what do you think of the Vikings offseason? Like, what do you think that they should be doing in the coming weeks here as free agency kind of kicks off?
Well, yeah, Matt, first and foremost, thanks for having me on the show.
Always.
It's a pleasure being on here. As a resident Viking fan, I always like to be able to talk Vikes just
Yes.
because I'm so fixated on the draft. I very rarely get to sit down and actually talk about my favorite team. So, it's going to be an interesting offseason. I thought Kwesi did a great job last year of adding free agents. He definitely has a type as far as what he wants to add. And I mean, it couldn't have got any better than what he
Hmm.
did last year, adding Jonathan Grenard and Andrew Van Ginkel, and the list goes on and on. Aaron Jones of the guys that he added in free agency. But one area where he does have to get better is the draft. I think they need to do a better job of supplementing some of the older guys that they have on the roster and infusing it with some of the young talent. They just really haven't been able to hit on a bunch of young guys throughout the draft. They do have some guys that they are really excited about. Jordan Addison is one. He's turned into a really good player. Then there's been some others as well. But as a whole, over Kwesi's 3 drafts, I believe it is so right now, they just haven't had consistency as far as the early on drafts and finding some talent in the mid to late rounds as well. So just finding some young talent specifically at defensive tackle, I believe that's an area where they definitely have to hit on a young player this year just because they don't have that explosive disruptor in the
Yep.
middle. I think they have a bunch of role players or B level or even C level starters. Right now, they don't have that A level or that blue chip guy in the middle. And I definitely think that could transform Brian Flores' defense. Cornerback is another area where I do think they need a young player just because all the starters are free agents right now. So we don't
Yes.
know. Not even just corner, but also safety as well. They have a ton of free agents on the back end too. And then also guard, interior offensive line. I definitely think they need some young talent there.
Are there any free agents that because I know back in the day before the Draft Network and ESPN and stuff, you were kind of calling your shots on free agents that you thought would be good fits with the Vikings. Are there any right now that you can sit and be like, man, that impending free agent would be a really good fit with the Vikings?
Well, there's two. I'll give you a level one, and I'll give you, I think, more so of a B level one. The first one is Javon Holland from the
Okay.
Dolphins, just because of his connection with Brian Flores. They have history together, and some of his best seasons were under Brian Flores, especially early on in his career. He has some familiarity with the defense as well, and we've seen they're not afraid to move off another player and bring in another player. We saw that with Daniil Hunter, and then they brought in Jonathan Grenard and then also Andrew Van Ginkel. So they could move away from Cameron Bynum and then also, hopefully not, they could move away from Harrison Smith as
Yeah.
well. But bringing in somebody like a Javon Holland, I definitely think that's a connection. That makes a lot of sense. And then another is Will Fries, the interior offensive lineman from the Colts. He'll be 27 years old, I believe, this upcoming season. They have a huge need at both guard spots, in my opinion. And I definitely think he would solidify that right guard spot if they do bring him in. He is coming off an injury last season, but prior to that point, he was playing really well. But he checks a lot of boxes that Kwesi has looked for in the past when he's looking to sign outside free agents.
Yeah, and that guard position, man, I mean, we've been talking about it for what feels like over a decade. We just can't quite seem to figure out what to do there. Another position too is quarterback. So we have JJ McCarthy in the wings, ready to take off. It was decided yesterday that the Vikings would not tag Sam Darnold, but I want to get your opinion on it because you've played quarterback, so you obviously know the intricacies of kind of what goes into that. And you're a Viking fan, so obviously you get that coming for you too. So, what are your thoughts on this Sam Darnold situation? Now they're not going to tag him, but there's reports out there that maybe the Vikings still want to work out a lower level deal with him. Would you like to see him return, or do you think it's just best to say on to the next on to the next thing?
I think it's just best to move on. And I know that may be tough for them just because of how well Sam played last year, and nobody, including myself, expected him to play as well as he did. But there's a reason that you drafted JJ McCarthy inside of the top 10. And that's because you had a lot of belief in him. And I think it would have been a competition for the starting spot last year. And I would not have been surprised if JJ was healthy, especially what he was showing through the preseason, if he opened week 1 as the starter last year. So there's a reason that you took him. you're already behind a year on the young quarterback or the rookie quarterback clock just because he was hurt last year. So you want to make sure you take advantage of that rookie quarterback, especially while he's cheap. He's been in the system for a year already, even though he was hurt. He's been in the meeting rooms. He's been at practice getting those virtual reps or those sideline reps or those mental reps. He hasn't been in there, of course, because of the knee, but he's still able to get reps. He knows the verbiage. He knows the terminology of the offense. Now it's just getting back up to speed, once again, trusting that knee, and then also showing exactly what you can do. But that's what, training camp, OTAs, that's what the preseason is going to be for. Now, I definitely think they need to bring in a veteran backup just in case he is not ready. So I would love for them to bring Daniel Jones back. I think Daniel Jones will be a great bet for them to make. I don't think he would be super expensive either. And he's another that already knows your system as well. So there's not a lot of teaching that's going on with either one of those guys. So for me, best case scenario is re-signing Daniel Jones, and then also allowing JJ McCarthy to show you that he's capable of being the starter.
Yeah, for sure. I want to transition now to the draft. You're coming off the Shrine Bowl, the Senior Bowl, the Combine, everything pre-draft kind of stuff going on. The Vikings obviously have some pivotal needs at D tackle, corner, running back is a need as well. Are there some guys who you think are perfect fits for the Vikings? We can go position by position that you would like to see them kind of go after, even though they do only have 4, potentially 5 draft picks coming into this.
I'll let you choose what position.
Let's start with D tackle.
Yeah. There's 2 guys for me, and I don't know if either is going to be there on the board. It's so unpredictable at number 24. But the first one is Walter Nolen out of Ole Miss. He's that explosive, disruptive interior guy that I think Brian Flores will be able to move around. He's very athletic, really strong hands. Does need to get a little bit better as far as a run defender. If there was one thing that I need to point out that he needs to get better at, it definitely would be that. But as far as somebody that can be that explosive penetrator that can get up the field right now, he would be great. And then the other is Derrick Harmon out of Oregon. He's another that's a little bit more consistent against the run. Needs to get better at finishing plays. He plays so out of control that sometimes he just runs past plays and he tries to reach that arm out and he's just racing past those guys. But he's another that took advantage of the transfer portal. He was at Michigan State prior to his one and only year at Oregon. But, man, he had a breakout year last year. So Derrick Harmon or Walter Nolen, that definitely would be 2 I think the Vikings are going to like quite a bit.
Do you think at all that because I know that in your top draft prospects from the risers and fallers from the Combine, you had Darius Alexander up there. Do you think that would be somebody who's in play if the Vikings look to trade back from that 24 pick and maybe get an early second rounder?
It could be. It all depends on how they feel about the age, honestly, especially when a guy is going to be a 25-year-old rookie. There's some teams that really flag ages when guys are 25 or 26 going into their rookie season. So he's a bit of an older prospect, but as far as the fit, I think he's a great fit just because he's another that can play really 1 through 9 up front. He can play any of those techniques. So he's another that would be a great fit. It just depends on their age, how they feel about the age with him.
Sure. One guy that I know that I've DM'd you about is the Tennessee guy, Norman Lott, who when I see him on tape, I think it's some fun energy that he brings to the field. But did I see that he had some medical concerns coming out of the Combine?
I did not hear that. I didn't hear anything medical wise with him. I definitely could check and get back to you about that, but I haven't heard any medical red flags, anything like that.
And so that kind of bummed me out because I know that he had limited snaps in already. Then if you throw in potentially an injury, that would kind of be a bummer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's switch over to the running backs. So obviously Aaron Jones, an impending free agent. Cam Akers, also an impending free agent. Both did pretty well last year for the Vikings, all things considered. But maybe one of the deepest running back classes we've ever seen, and able to maybe grab a starter on day 2 or day 3. Who are some of your favorite guys in this draft?
Well, man, I'm just looking at my list here. There's so many different ways the Vikings could go. I think it all depends on if they bring Aaron Jones back, honestly.
Sure.
If they bring Aaron Jones back, I would like to see them get a bigger back that can really, handle that between the tackles stuff, just because I think that's what happened a lot with their running game. They just didn't have that big in between the tackles banger that can get those tough yards and then also reel off some chunk plays too. But some guys I think that satisfy that. Caleb Johnson out of Iowa, I definitely think is a great fit, especially with so much outside zone that Kevin O'Connell wants to run, and him being a bigger back at about 6'1", 220 pounds or so. he definitely would be a good fit. Damian Martinez out of Miami, if they're looking to get somebody late day 2, early day 3, he definitely will be a good fit. Devin Neal out of Kansas, who's one of my favorites in this year's draft, he definitely would be a good fit as well. But my favorite overall back for somebody that I would pound the table for if I were the Vikings is DJ Giddens out of Kansas State. He's one that I absolutely love. He shocked me at the combine. I was not expecting him to run in the low 4.4s. He looks more so of a low to mid 4.5 guy on tape. So top end speed was a huge question mark about him, but him running in the low 4.4s, that was a huge box for him to check.
Yeah, he is someone that I was watching film on back in January, and I was like, this guy, he's got the juice to him. He can play, and I think it's perfect for the Vikings, right? When you think about the need there, you really can. You listed all those guys, and it just throughout the draft, you can really go and pick and choose where you want to get them. So I hope that we end up with Giddens personally, but I know he's not on the show today, but Nick Miller, he's a big Martinez fan as well, and I know Miles is a Dylan Sampson guy. So I mean, we got a whole smattering of interest here on Vikings Happy Hour, but I think we'll be happy with anybody who comes our way. Let's go to DBs. So Byron Murphy, who knows if he'll be back, looking to get paid again. I know there's been some rumors about the Vikings being interested in DJ Reid, but from an NFL draft prospect perspective, who are some guys that stand out and would fit a Brian Flores type defense?
Yeah, just looking at, I think the second round, late first to early second round, I should say, is the sweet spot for a lot of these guys. And the great thing for the Vikings is if they want to trade back, I think they're going to be right in the wheelhouse of where some of these guys could go. I'm looking at Benjamin Morrison out of Notre Dame, depending on how they feel about the medical with him. Trey Amos out of Ole Miss is one. Savon Ravel out of ECU is another. But one I think is a perfect fit for him is Azarie Thomas out of Florida State. Okay. He's one that I'm a huge fan of. Only 20 years old, true press man corner. He could turn his back to the sideline and play zone as well. Really impressed with him at the Senior Bowl and what he was able to do and what he's capable of doing. And then also Jahdae Barron. I had them going Jahdae Barron in my latest mock draft. I don't know if he's going to be available at 24, but that's just how my mock draft felt. I wouldn't be surprised if he is there, but I wouldn't be surprised if he goes higher than that as well.
The Vikings are going to be in a tricky spot because if some of these guys are there at 24, but also there's still depth at those positions in the later rounds, like how do you know the class better than anybody. How do you navigate that? Like weighing, a Barron at 24 or dropping back and taking Thomas later?
Well, it all depends on which position they feel has the most depth. And that's the one that you always want to take second. So, for example, I think cornerback doesn't have as much depth as defensive tackle. I think this defensive tackle class is absolutely loaded. So if it were me, if they want to go corner early, then you select the corners just so you can get one of your top options. And then you come back and you get the defensive tackle, depending on where their second pick is. If they get that third round comp pick, they can take one there. They may trade back and get 2 day 2 picks. We don't know what Kwesi is going to do just because they have such a limited amount of draft capital. So it's just a matter of which position they feel is the deepest. I would really relegate that or wait on that and then take the position that you feel like is not the deepest just because it doesn't have a lot of depth there.
Yeah, and that makes sense to me. I mean, I think this is a very pivotal draft for Kwesi, right? I mean, he still doesn't have his contract extension. Hopefully that comes soon for him, but he's really got to hit on some of these players, and it's going to be interesting to watch. There's a couple other guys I want to just quick get your feedback on. The Kentucky corner, Maxwell Harrison. What are your thoughts on him, and do you think that he could be someone that the Vikings maybe look at?
Yeah, absolutely. I think they're definitely going to be interested in him, especially after how he tests or how explosive he tested, just because one thing that's been consistent with the Vikings is that they have drafted explosive athletes. That's something that Kwesi has been very adamant about. He likes drafting those high upside, very athletic type of guys, whether it's on offense or defense. One thing has been consistent is that they value those testing numbers, and they like the guys that are in the upper percentiles. So Maxwell Harrison is definitely going to be one of those corners that was in the higher percentiles, running, I believe it was 4.28 or 4.29 at the combine. He ran super fast. He jumped really high as well, and that shows up on tape. with him as well. He's a consistent wrap-up and finish tackler. Then also his technique is really good as well. So I think Harrison is somebody that they're definitely going to be interested in.
Sweet. Last position, we've kind of talked about it on the free agent side, but interior offensive line. I've seen the NDSU kid Zabel sometimes mocked to the Vikings in the first round. I guess I would be floored if the Vikings took a guard in the first round, but I could be wrong. Are there some guys maybe on day 2 or day 3 that Viking fans should take a look at and keep their ears open?
Yeah, just looking at my list, and I'll just go down it. I mean, Donovan Jackson is somebody that I think would be a great fit. Maybe not at 24, maybe at 24, they may like him that much. But if they trade back, low first or early second round, Donovan Jackson would be a really good fit. Marcus Bowe out of Purdue is another that I think they'll like quite a bit as a guard. Tate Ratledge from Georgia is one that I think they'll like quite a bit as well. And I mean, there's some others that they could like on day 3. Miles Frazier out of LSU is one.
Okay.
Luke Kandra out of Cincinnati is another. And Jake Majors out of Tennessee, if they want to take a guy that has a center or guard flexibility.
Is it a good – I mean, we've heard about running back and D tackle being like the deep classes, but is the guard class pretty good too?
This draft class is kind of weird, man, just because there's some tackles that you feel are guards and there's some guards that you feel would be better at tackle. So it's just a matter of where you project these guys. But where I have some of these guys projected, I think it's an okay guard class. It's not a great center class at all, in my opinion. Once you get past Zabel and Jarrett Wilson, I mean, there's a bunch of guys that, just didn't have a lot of snaps at center or guard. And then also guys that are just not very good. They're more late round guys. So it's not an overly great center class, but there is a little bit, it's a bit top heavy at guard. I will say that.
I might catch you off guard here because I'm switching positions that you maybe weren't prepared for, but we had Ben Albright on a couple weeks ago, and he dropped a little nugget that he thinks the Vikings want to run more two tight end sets, and that doesn't necessarily include Josh Oliver. They kind of want maybe a dynamic tight end next to Hawkinson. He dropped a name, the Syracuse tight end Gadsden.
Yeah.
Are there some other tight ends that maybe would fit that mold of a dynamic tight end for the Vikings?
Yeah. 2 I'll give you. Terrence Ferguson out of Oregon is one that I think is very dynamic. He's a really good route runner. Probably, I think he ran in the high 4.6s, if I'm not mistaken, which I mean is a solid time for a tight end. His production was off the charts there during his time at Oregon as well. And then let's see, Jalen Conyers out of Texas Tech, I believe is another that I think they'll like quite a bit. Somebody that bounced around from Arizona State and then also to Texas Tech as well. Put up solid numbers overall. He's more of your athletic tight end. He's not going to give you a whole bunch as a blocker. So if they're looking to go more 12 personnel, Conyers is definitely one I think they could like.
Okay. And then I'd be remiss if I didn't ask about wide receivers for Miles. I know that's his group, so I have to call that out. I know one of his guys is Jahdae Higgins, who I think you're pretty high on as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I don't think he's going to be there for the Vikings. If they stay at 24 and then they don't have another pick until that 3rd round pick, I'll be surprised if Jahdae Higgins is on the board for him. But one name I will give you that I think would be a great addition is Kyle Williams out of Washington State. He's somebody that I am very, very high on. I actually have a 3rd round grade on him. I was blown away with him at the Senior Bowl. I thought him and Higgins and also Jalen Noel were also the best receivers at the Senior Bowl. I mean, he's not an overly fast guy, even though he did run 4.42 at the combine. He doesn't play 4.42 on tape. He runs with like a very tempo. He understands how to get open, really good hands. He really competes after the catch too. So Kyle Williams out of Washington State is definitely one name.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, tight end and wide receiver, it's going to be weird because, with the limited draft capital, maybe you're not taking those positions. But to your point, if they have a high grade on them and they can make an impact, you might as well take a shot. So before I let you go, what is your ideal – I don't want to say ideal. What is your prediction, what you think the Vikings will do at pick 24?
I would be surprised if they don't trade back, honestly, just because they have such limited draft capital. I think they have, a 1st and 2 5ths right now, if I'm not mistaken. So very limited draft capital. I think Kwesi is going to attempt to move around quite a bit in this draft class. I think he wants to come out of this draft with 6 or 7 picks, if I had to guess right now. So I would not be surprised if he makes, 3 or 4 moves in this draft. I would not be surprised with that at all. But I definitely think they need to take advantage of this loaded defensive tackle class just because they have such a need along the interior. And like I said, they just need that blue chip guy. Assuming they don't address it in free agency, they need that blue chip guy in the middle just because they don't have that true disruptor in the middle. So defensive tackle would be the way that I go with that first pick. And then after that, whatever you feel most comfortable about how the board fell with a guard or a corner, just because I think they need help there.
For sure. Would you sacrifice 26 picks to get more picks this year? Or do you feel like that class is better and those picks are probably more valuable?
Well, I haven't studied the 26 class yet, so I don't know. It just depends on, that's what the scouting department gets paid the big bucks for. So
for sure,
they've probably already started scouting a little bit about the 26 class just so they can see how comfortable they are about giving up some future draft capital. But I mean, personally, I can't really attest to that just because I don't know. I haven't really studied the 26 class. So for me, I would just look to trade back and then just keep trying to trade back to accumulate a way to eventually get to 6 or 7 picks in this draft class.
Just got to call up Rick Spielman and see how he did it.
Yeah.
But well, I appreciate you joining us and being flexible today. I know your journey for the NFL draft is about to really ramp up here post combine. You get some pro days and I'm sure a lot of podcast, TV appearance. So always appreciative of you joining us and talking Vikings and talking NFL draft stuff. So for everybody listening, hit like and subscribe. We'll be back later this week with Alec Lewis of The Athletic, who also was at the NFL Combine and had his ears in the rooms with Kevin O'Connell and Kwesi Adofo-Mensah. So maybe we can pull some insider information from him. And then next week is NFL free agency. So, I mean, it'll be busy in and of itself. We'll see what the Vikings do with Darnold, with Bynum, with Murphy, and anybody else that they decide to bring in. So, JR, thank you. And for everybody else, we'll see you next time. Skol Vikes.